Taking a week off sounds like a luxury, something you feel guilty for, something you have to earn or justify. But the reality is, it might be the single most productive thing you do all year. Welcome to Working Mumma, a podcast for women navigating the juggle of career and motherhood. If you're returning to work after maternity leave, trying to figure out how to make all this work, or you just need someone to say out loud what you've been thinking, you're in the right place. So glad you're here. Whether you're a regular or this is your first time, let's get into it. Confession. I've just got back from a week away skiing with my family, and I want to be honest with you about something, about what I didn't expect to happen on that trip. I knew I was tired going in. If you'd asked me before we left, I would have told you, yeah, I'm running a little bit on empty. I've got a corporate role. I've just increased my days from 4 to 5. I've recently had an international work trip, work travel, and then running Working Mumma on top of that. The recording, editing, content, DMs, 2 young boys, a household to run. I really know the tank was running on low. But here's the thing that nobody tells you. Knowing that you're tired and actually feeling how tired you are 2 completely different things. It wasn't till about day 3 of that trip where I was really only triaging some emails. Wasn't really turning the laptop on. No one was needing me for too much other than to help them get their ski boots on, and the kids were wanting to go to ski school. I had only had to cook 1 meal last week, so the whole mental load of meal planning, shopping, I didn't have to deal with last week. And it wasn't till probably about day 4, maybe, that I was feeling some shift, that my brain went quiet. And it wasn't an instant feeling, but it was slowly. Over a few days, the noise started to clear. And you know what? By about Thursday last week, almost at the end of the week, I felt something that I hadn't felt in quite a while, probably since the start of the year. And that was some clarity, some space to actually think. I felt recharged. I felt that I wasn't just reacting, but I felt that I actually had lightened the load, both mentally and physically. And I felt like I'd actually had a break. I guess it made me a little bit angry, if I'm completely honest, because also it made me realize how far I was running on empty. I think I was running on the fumes. I often let myself just get by, even without clocking it, because when you're in the moment, you're on the treadmill, exhausted just feels like any other normal day. So today I want to talk to you about what happens and why it happens, why switching off shouldn't be seen as indulgent, and it's not a reward that you have to earn. Instead, it's maintenance. And why for working mums especially, we are least likely to do it. And you know what? We're probably the ones that need it the most. So let's name the guilt in the room, because I know that there's a lot of you listening, and myself included, that will be thinking, oh, I can't do this, and there's a guilt around it. You're not being dramatic. You're not being precious. You're not bad at managing your time if a week off makes you realize how depleted you were. You're not weak for needing to switch off. Your human nervous system that has been running on high alert for a very long time, and you've given it permission to come down off it and recharge. And here's what actually is happening in your body. When you're under sustained stress, and let's be honest, the mental load of working motherhood is sustained stress. Your body keeps producing cortisol. That's your stress hormone. Chronically elevated cortisol doesn't just make you feel wired and tired. It actually affects your brain's ability to process and remember information, which ironically makes you more overwhelmed, not less. It's a loop. Stress makes it harder to think clearly, which makes you feel more stressed. And so then what do you need to do to break this cycle? You need something like a circuit breaker, like physically going away or even trying to recharge. And the research backs up what happened to me last week when I did go on a holiday. A recent 2025 study, a meta-analysis that pulled together 22 separate studies on vacations and well-being, found that time away significantly reduces exhaustion, removes mood, improves mood, and increases life satisfaction. A separate review of 54 studies found measurable psychological changes after time off, reduced cortisol, better heart rate variability, better sleep. This isn't vibes. This is your body on paper doing something different when you actually stop. And I have to say, I also felt that I was sleeping much better. There was one day I think I had about 8 hours sleep uninterrupted. That is unheard of, but it was amazing. But here's the part that matters most for us specifically. The researchers found that the real mechanisms isn't the beach or the mountains or a change of scenery. It's something called psychological detachment. Genuinely disengaging from work mentally, not just physically. Not checking the emails just in case. Not half listening to your family while you're mentally drafting or replying in your head. Full, actual disconnection. And that's exactly why working mums are the group least likely to get a benefit of a holiday. Because even when we're physically away, many of us are still on, still the default parent, still the one who's packing everyone's bags, remembering the sunscreen, the snacks, knows where the passports are, knows exactly how the ski boots, in my case, need to be done up. And it's thinking about what's waiting in the inbox for when we're back. We've talked about this on the podcast before about the mental load, about how it's not just remembering the logistics, but it's being the one who's responsible for everything all the time. And that doesn't automatically switch off just because you're on holidays. So it's not enough to just take leave. We have to actually practice putting it down. And here's what really sits with me though. Somewhere along the way, we started treating exhaustion as a personality trait instead of a warning sign. I'm just tired. I'm exhausted. Hey, how are you? Yeah, I'm exhausted. Oh, it's just so much going on. But that's life. And we say it like it's neutral. We say it as a bit of a badge of honor, but it's also just we've normalized what it's like to be exhausted. Like it's just the tax you pay for having a job and also having a family. We've normalized running on empty. And worse, we've almost turned it into a badge of honor. If you're not exhausted, are you even trying hard enough? But your body doesn't actually care about whether exhaustion is normal or not. It responds the same way regardless. The World Health Organization now formally recognizes burnout in its international classification of diseases. It's not a mood. It's a diagnosable occupational phenomenon caused by chronic stress that hasn't been successfully managed. The physical toll is real. Sustained high cortisol doesn't just affect your mood and your focus. It suppresses immune function, disrupts sleep, and over time it's linked to higher blood pressure and increased cardiovascular risk. The World Health Organization also looks specifically at long working hours. They found that working 55 or more hours a week was associated with a 35% higher risk of stroke and a 17% higher risk of dying from heart disease compared to a standard 35 to 40-hour week. And that's before the unpaid mental load hours on top come into it, which for most of us don't show up on a timesheet, but absolutely show up on your body. And side note, one of the people I was away with, she's now retired, but her doctor had actually given her a warning. If she hadn't slowed down after working 70 plus hours a week in a senior as the director of a HR function, that she was going to be in a wooden box within 6 months. She was given, essentially said, this is not doing you well. So she's had to then make the decision and she stopped work and actually went from 70 hours down to 0 hours. And she said that now her hair is no longer falling out and she's got her life back. So this is also some of the impacts that stress has on your body as well. I know if you're listening, you're probably not near retirement, so you need to then put in some strategies on how to reduce that stress. And your stress response is designed to protect you in short bursts, which is genuinely useful when there's an actual threat. Think about the flight or fight. But when it's switched on constantly, when there's no off, your health pays the price. Not might, it certainly does. So this isn't really about whether you deserve a holiday. It's about whether constantly running on empty is something that we're willing to treat as normal when the research is very clear that it isn't neutral. It's a slow cost to your mental and your physical health, whether or not it feels dramatic day to day. And the numbers are wild. Let me just go through some because I think it's bigger than any of us individually. Beyond Blue ran a survey of Australian workers last year in 2025 and found that 1 in 2 of us had experienced burnout in the past year. That is 1 in 2. That's half the working population of Australia. Now zoom in on women specifically. Women's Agenda 2025 Ambition Report surveyed over 1,400 Australian women and found 72% had experienced burnout in the past 12 months. That's not, I felt a bit tired. It's burnout. And yet, we are terrible at actually using our leave. Roy Morgan research from late 2025 found Australians are sitting on 209 million days of unused annual leave between us. Nearly 35% of paid workers currently have no leave banked at all. They're not taking it because they don't have to take it. And of the people who do have the leave sitting there, guilt is consistently the number one reason why it doesn't get used. One Australian survey found almost 2 in 3 people felt guilty simply asking for time off. And sit with that for a second. We're exhausted at record levels and simultaneously the most reluctant generation to take the very thing that is proven to help us. Sometimes I'll just have a chill weekend doesn't always cut it when you're this depleted. Sometimes you need enough days in a row for your nervous system to believe that you've stopped and also recharge. So what do you do with this if you can't exactly go off skiing or just get out of town when you're running on empty? Because I know most of us can't. A few things I want to leave you with. First, rest is not a reward you earn after you've proven you deserve it. It's maintenance, like sleep, food. You don't wait until you're malnourished to eat. Don't wait until you're at total burnout to rest. Second, protect the switch off, not just the time off. If you're going to take leave, actually practice psychological detachment. That means an out of office, that means it. Handing over the mental load list to your partner, not just the physical tasks. Deciding in advance what you will not be thinking about. And third, notice on your own day 3. For me, it took me 3 full days before my brain quietened down. It's useful information. It tells me that a single day off probably isn't giving me the reset I think it is. I'm often just getting to the point of starting to switch off and I'm straight back into it. Pay attention how long it actually takes you to come down off this high alert so you know what you're actually working with and what works for you. And finally, if you're reading your own exhaustion right now and thinking, I already know I'm tired, I don't need a trip to tell me that. I gently push back on that. Knowing it and feeling the release of putting it down are not the same thing. You might not know how tired you really are until you actually stop. And I have to say, this was me last week. I didn't know how tired I was and how exhausted I was. I want to leave you with a few questions rather than just another to-do list, because I think for most of us, the block isn't that we don't know a break would help us. It's that we never actually stop long enough to ask ourselves if we need one. So if you've got a minute after this episode, sit with a few of these questions, maybe even a voice memo to yourself the answers or write them down. Have a think about where you're actually at. If I'm honest, when did I last feel the way I want to feel? Calm, clear, and like myself. How long ago was that? What am I currently telling myself is just how it is that might actually be a sign I need a break? Whose voice is it, really, telling me that I don't deserve time off right now? Mine or someone else's? And what would I tell my best friend if she described the way that I'm feeling right now? What's the actual cost of not resting? to my health, my patience, my relationships, to my kids, versus the perceived cost of stepping away even just for a few days. And if you can't take a holiday right now, like take a week off, what's the smallest version of switching off that you could do this month? Who would need to know and what would need to be handed over for you to genuinely disconnect and not just be physically absent? And that's a difference between the two. What's one date I could put in the calendar in the next week, even if it's small, so this isn't just a nice idea I forget by Friday? You don't need all the answers right now, but even if one of those questions made you go, ooh, that's probably one worth paying attention to. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this episode, it's this. Needing to switch off doesn't mean you're failing at managing everything. It means that you're genuinely carrying a huge, heavy load. And your body and your brain are asking for what every human body and brain needs, a chance to come down off high alert, off the flight or fight mode that often we get into. You don't have to wait for permission from work, for your family, or for some imaginary version of yourself that has it all together first. You have permission right now. Thanks so much for spending this time with me today. If this one's landed for you, I'd love for you to share it with a fellow working mum who's overdue for a break of her own. And I'll catch you in the next episode.